What would happen if I told you that Lewis Hamilton never had a real opportunity in Azerbaijan? That Q2 was an invisible trap, woven by its own car, and not even Ferrari knew it until it was too late. What if the true enemy was not another pilot, but the SF-25? Azerbaijan, an urban circuit that combines the brutality of the longest lines of the calendar with the surgical precision of its most closed curves. A layout that exposes any mechanical or technical weakness without mercy. In such an environment, the margin of error is not only reduced, it is non-existent. And yet, it was there that something unusual happened. Lewis Hamilton was eliminated in Q2. It was not a piloting error. It was not a bad pneumatic strategy. It was something deeper. Something that was not seen, but that was sabotaging it from within. From the outside, analysts began to launch theories. Lack of adaptation to SF-25, problems with the setting, nervousness of the pilot and a new team. But none of these explanations square with what had really been seen on the track. Hamilton did not make visible mistakes. It did not block tires. It did not stop braking. It was slow. Mysteriously slow. That was the word that began to resonate inside the paddock. Mystery. Because Hamilton, who had shown signs of improvement in training, which had led certain partials during the free, suddenly blurred in the decisive phase. How could there be such an abrupt disconnection between expectation and performance? What few knew at that time is that at the bottom of the Ferrari garage, Frédéric Vasseur was not calm. I wasn't for several days. He knew better than anyone the volatile nature of the new SF-25, and had indications that something was not working properly. But what I still did not know is that this something was not a fine adjustment. It was a structural failure. Baku was, without anyone knowing at that time, the turning point. The place where the illusion of having everything under control was completely broken. And the history of the weekend of Ferrari, and in particular of Hamilton, ceased to be the story of a pilot who did not find the rhythm, to become that of a team that did not know how to see in time what was really failing. And while the world of Formula One analyzed the times by return, the paths and the onboard cameras, Vasseur, with a mixture of intuition and experience, immersed himself in a technical review that was going to bring to light one of the most disturbing truths of the season. Hamilton's car was never in a position to fight. The night fell on Baku, and while many teams closed their garages, in Ferrari something different was happening. Frédéric Vasseur, far from retiring, remained in front of the data. Something did not fit. Hamilton's car sensors did not show an obvious failure at first glance, but there was a subtle discrepancy between what the numbers said and what the pilot had felt. The analysis began by the simplest data: braking telemetry, temperatures, load distribution. But as the technical team deepened, a clear and alarming pattern emerged. In each fast Hamilton, the temperature of the front brake discs fluctuated anomalously, without an apparent cause. It was not a variation within the tolerable. It was a thermal oscillation that indicated that the system did not reach stability. Carbon discs in a Formula One car need to operate in a precise temperature window: too cold and do not stop, too hot and lose efficiency. In Hamilton's SF-25, one of the front discs never reached that optimal area. This completely altered the brake bite point. And that, in Baku, is a technical suicide. Baku, then, was not just the discovery of a technical inconsistency. It was the mirror that forced Ferrari to look straight ahead. And what they saw was not only a brake problem, but a structure too fearful to react with the speed that the modern Formula One demands. To understand why the Ferrari brake system has become one of its most worrisome weak points this season, you must first understand how a braking system really works in a modern Formula One car. It is not simply about applying strength on a pedal. It is an interdependent ecosystem where carbon discs, tweezers, hydraulic systems, energy recovery and electronic maps must act in millimeter synchrony. The SF-25 was designed with a braking logic that prioritizes performance in perfectly stable thermal conditions. That is, their brakes are calibrated to function in a narrow temperature window, optimized for ideal track, load and airflow conditions. When all that is fulfilled, the car slows down. Very good, in fact. But if one of those factors changes, the entire system unbalanced. And this is what happened in Baku. The long straight with few intense braking areas generated an unexpected problem. The brakes did not warm up enough, and when they did it asymmetrically. The result was an inconsistency at the bite point, that critical moment in which the pilot expects an immediate response from the car, and does not get it. This is where the concept of braking migration enters. This completely electronic system allows the distribution of the braking effort to be varied between the front axle and the rear in real time, even within the same curve. Ferrari configured this system more rigid than most of its rivals. They were looking for a precise and predictable braking, but only when the car was in their ideal thermal functioning area. In any other scenario, like the first laps of a session or cold track conditions, the system became erratic. To compensate for this, Ferrari systematically resorted to the lift and coast. This technique, which consists of lifting the foot of the accelerator before braking to help cool the brakes and conserve energy, is common in specific career conditions. But in Ferrari, it became operational norm, even classification sessions. Hamilton and also Leclerc were asked to start with LeCo from Tour 5. That is a clear sign. The system is not able to sustain its performance without external help. Ferrari, on the other hand, bet everything on a very refined concept, very specific, but also very fragile. One that works under perfect conditions, but that falls apart with the least alteration of the environment. A system that punishes the pilot when you need more confidence. And that, in a sport where trust is everything, it can be the most serious Achilles heel. In summary, the SF25 brake system is not broken, but it is badly calibrated for the type of demands that the 2025 season is presenting. And if Ferrari does not find a way of redesigning or recalibrating that system without fear of admitting mistakes, Hamilton will continue fighting not against his rivals, but against his own car. Vasseur's technical finding was not a simple diagnosis. It was an alarm that presented a critical vulnerability in Ferrari's operational structure. Because what happened in Baku was not just a bad classification. It was a revelation. SF25 has structural limitations that cannot be ignored. And these limitations are not solved with an aerodynamic improvement or with a new spoiler specification. They require a deep restructuring of the technical and internal management approach to the equipment. The consequences of this finding are multiple. First, it directly affects the dynamics between pilot and equipment. Hamilton, who came to Ferrari with the promise of leading a competitive project, has discovered that there are still important cracks in the way Ferrari faces his problems. The British, accustomed to highly integrated work structures such as Mercedes, has encountered an organization that still struggles with fragmented decisions and a cultural resistance to technical self-criticism. From Baku, Hamilton has demanded internally but firm a change in information flows. It is no longer enough for engineers to make technical decisions. Now they must validate those decisions under a supervision chain that includes their direct feedback. It is not about ego. It is about preventing what happened in that weekend again, being sabotaged without knowing it by your own car. On a technical level, Ferrari faces a complex dilemma. It can redesign brake ducts and emphasize the braking migration system to allow a broader thermal margin. But doing so would imply admitting publicly or at least internally that the original SF25 concept was wrong. And in a team with so much media pressure, internal policy and structural pride, that is not easy. The alternative is even more dangerous. Maintaining the current base and trying to correct symptoms without attacking the cause. This would mean permanently depending on strategies such as the lift and coast, with restrictive motor maps, or even changes in the configuration that limit the pilot's attack capacity in certain career phases. In a nutshell, compromise the competitiveness of the car to avoid the reputational wear of the technical team. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix was not a simple page on the calendar of the season. It was a warning. It was that moment where the invisible machinery of a team like Ferrari showed its seams, not in the form of a catastrophic failure, but in a series of small chained errors that, together, undermined any possibility of success. And the most disturbing thing is that these types of errors are the most difficult to detect, because they are hidden behind the facade of the data, the analysis, of the simulations, even of the public speeches. The discovery of Vasseur that thermal imbalance, that asymmetric distribution of braking, those unauthorized modifications was much more than a technical diagnosis. Was a mirror. One that forced Ferrari to look with brutal honesty what he still needs to change if he wants to be the reference he once was. And this raises a major question. How many teams in the modern Formula One are losing races not due to lack of power or talent, but for not having the humility of accepting design errors, or by prioritizing the internal image over real performance? Hamilton understood him immediately. It is not enough to get on a Ferrari to win. It is not enough to have a fast cargo in simulation. The true battle is to transform an engineering culture that sometimes fears, in one that dares to redesign on the march, to emphasize what is needed, to reinvent itself if necessary. So the next time you see a pilot like Hamilton being out of a key session, ask yourself, was it a mistake, or was it a more deep signal? Because in this contemporary Formula One, the true enemy is often not on the track. It is within the team itself.